Dr. Aisha Sheikh is a consultant endocrinologist and lecturer in the Aga Khan University Hospital, Karachi, and Medical Institute of Diabetes and Endocrinology and Metabolism from Karachi. She is also the registered tutor at University of South Wales, UK. She has several publications to her credit, including several book chapters, and at being an executive member of Pakistan Endocrine Society, she currently holds the position of Joint Secretary of Pakistan Endocrine Society. Please welcome her with a loud applause.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalatu wassalamu ala khatamin nabiyyin. Assalamu alaikum everyone, and I'm really grateful to the scientific committee for inviting me for this talk. So this is the International Diabetes Federation Atlas that showed a prevalence of 16% hyperglycemia in pregnancy in the year 2019. We'll be having the current figures this year as well. And out of these, 84% were due to gestational diabetes mellitus. What is important to understand is that the prevalence of GDM has risen over last more than a decade, primarily contributed by the increased prevalence of type 2 diabetes mellitus in our background population, coupled with universal screening practices and the use of IADPSG criteria for diagnosing GDM. So it has been known for over 50 years that the diagnosis of GDM identifies a population of women who are at risk of ultimately developing type 2 diabetes mellitus in the years thereafter. This is a meta-analysis of 77 studies from 36 countries and showed a 20% prevalence of diabetes after 5 years of GDM index pregnancy. Quite high prevalences over here. So you are familiar with the hyperglycemia and adverse pregnancy outcome study that formed the basis of IADPSG criteria. Its follow-up study that was published in the year 2018 had these women followed at 10 to 11 years post the original HAPO study. And you can see that women with GDM had higher prevalence of pre-diabetes and type 2 diabetes compared to women who did not have GDM in the original HAPO study. Similarly, this is an analysis of more than 240,000 women who gave birth over 10 years in Alberta. And you can see that the incidence of type 2 diabetes, while in the reference group is only those who did not have GDM and were non-obese, is only 1.1%. However, 18% in GDM women and 36% in those women who had GDM and are overweight as well. So in contrast to the associations of future diabetes mellitus risk, the cardiovascular implications of hyperglycemia in pregnancy are less well understood. However, a growing body of evidence suggests that an analogous relationship exists between hyperglycemia in pregnancy and a woman's long-term risk of cardiovascular disease as well. So GDM predicts at least a 2 times higher risk of cardiovascular disease. This is coming from a pooled meta-analysis of 9 studies comprising of more than 5 million women. The diagnosis of GDM identifies young women who are having a 2-fold higher risk of cardiovascular disease events compared to their counterparts and at a young age. Similarly, this risk is actually independent of incident type 2 diabetes mellitus as well. So when restricted to women who do not have developed type 2 diabetes, this study showed that GDM remained associated with a 56% higher risk of type 2 diabetes of cardiovascular events with a relative risk of 1.56. Similarly, the offspring is at risk as well. Again, coming from the HAPO follow-up study, you can see that children born to mothers with GDM compared to those without GDM had higher adiposity at the follow-up study that was at almost 11 years of their age, and as shown by the adiposity markers. And this brings to the concept of programming and imprinting. So in utero, a process through which a stimulus or insult establishes permanent response, and in case of GDM, it's the abnormal concentration of nutrient that the fetus is exposed to in the in utero life. And exposure during a critical period of development can influence the physiological metabolic functions in later life. Nominated as the fuel-mediated teratogenesis, however, you can see that GDM that is classically occurring at 24 to 28 weeks of gestation, a period where anthropometric and metabolic parameters would be adversely impacted by this altered fuel load to the fetus leads to non-communicable diseases in the offspring in the later life. And thus, the NCDs are programmed and imprinted during pregnancy. Again, this is a paper that has looked at 142 associations, different factors that you can even ever think about that can lead to diabetes mellitus. Out of these, the robust evidence has been for these 3 factors, which include GDM as well. So this is again more than 2.6 million women data, meta-analysis of 30 studies, looking at women with prior GDM has substantially increased risk of diabetes with the risk highest during the 3 to 6 years after GDM. So a relative risk of 7.7%. And if you look at the odds ratio of at what time after delivery that woman is more at risk to develop diabetes, between 3 to 6 years, the risk is 16%. And that is important when we talk about intervention in these women in the postpartum period. So just a quick review of diabetes prevention program. You're all familiar with this DPP because that found the basis of pre-diabetes intervention so that you can prevent or delay type 2 diabetes mellitus. The lifestyle intervention arm actually looked at a goal of 7% weight loss through a diet restricted in fat, 25% of calories coming from fat, and restricted the calorie intake to 1,200 to 1,800 kilocalories per day, a goal that is based on initial body weight. And then physical activity comprising of at least more than 140 minutes of walk each week that will burn at least 700 kilocalories per week. But this was a very intensive intervention where you can see that individualized 1-to-1 16 lesson curriculum over 24 weeks was delivered to these participants and coupled with monthly individual and group sessions to reinforce changes as well. Looking at the subgroup analysis from this DPP comprising of women with previous GDM, lifestyle interventions reduced progression to diabetes mellitus by 53%. And in the same subgroup analysis, the metformin group, women with GDM, there was a 50% risk reduction that was different from the overall group where it was just 33%. However, if you look at women who did not have GDM, then the intensive lifestyle reduced 49%, so not very much difference in terms of whether you are having a GDM woman or a woman without GDM with pre-diabetes. So the DPP follow-up study at 10 years showed still a 35% risk reduction of progression to diabetes mellitus in the lifestyle intervention group. However, it's important to understand that DPP enrolled 12 years after the first pregnancy was complicated by GDM. So the question arises, shouldn't we intervene earlier for these women? And you can recall the previous slide where I showed that the risk is highest at 3 to 6 years post-delivery. So this lifestyle intervention on long-term risk of diabetes in women with prior GDM, this is a systematic review and meta-analysis of 10 studies, and which were lifestyle interventions were initiated within 3 years after delivery, was highly effective, and led to a 43% reduction in long-term risk of diabetes. This same meta-analysis actually looked at whether if we intervene during pregnancy, will that help in preventing long-term risk of type 2 diabetes mellitus. And the conclusion was that lifestyle intervention during pregnancy was not effective at reducing the risk of postpartum diabetes. So if you start to intervene in that pregnancy with lifestyle modification with the aim to prevent type 2 diabetes in the long run, this will not be effective. However, we understand that if we intervene early in the postpartum period, that is going to help these women. Whether these interventions are cost effective, this shows that whatever current evidence is available, screening for GDM is cost effective, cost saving, and intensive postpartum diet and education in women with GDM to prevent type 2 diabetes mellitus is actually cost effective. So what we have learned so far is that is type 2 diabetes mellitus prevention after pregnancy effective in women with GDM? So the answer is probably yes. The subgroup analysis of type DPP conducted 12 years after the index pregnancy suggests a similar effect observed among women without previous history of GDM. The intervention shortly after pregnancy is effective and feasible, although there is a low to moderate quality evidence to support this statement. We do not know the effect size yet, and likely depends on the intensity of intervention as well. So larger, well-designed trials are needed. So around the globe, there are different trials being underway in different countries where people have enrolled post-GDM as early as 10 weeks post-delivery till 2 years after delivery, and they are looking at intensive lifestyle intervention. Most of these trials are still underway and will be having the results once these trials are concluded. But in the same context, we must not forget another important intervention that might be helpful in these women, which is high-intensity breastfeeding. And this meta-analysis, trial actually looked at high-intensity breastfeeding effect on postpartum glucose intolerance in women with recent GDM. And high-intensity breastfeeding was defined as either exclusive breastfeeding or more than 80% volume. And you can see that compared to women who were not undergoing high-intensity breastfeeding for their infants, high-intensity breastfeeding group had a significantly lower risk of abnormal glucose tolerance in the postpartum period. Another meta-analysis, which is based on observational studies on effect of lactation on incident diabetes in women with previous GDM, shows that exclusive lactation for more than 6 to 9 weeks postpartum had a lower risk of type 2 diabetes mellitus compared to an exclusive formula feed with a Knox ratio of 0.42. So a remarkable effect on incident type 2 diabetes mellitus risk. So in the earlier statement, we can add that lactation, longer and exclusive lactation may be beneficial for type 2 diabetes mellitus prevention in women with previous GDM. So coming to what is happening back home, this is a study from Pakistan, postpartum follow-up women with GDM, effectiveness determinants and barriers. They included 78 women with GDM and normal glucose tolerance, 89 women, and looked at the study subjects were received reminders for lifestyle modification as well as blood glucose screening via telephone at 6 months, 12 months, and 24 months postpartum. The concerning thing was that only 27 women with GDM out of these 78 women actually opted for a regular screening for type 2 diabetes mellitus over this study period, despite the fact that they were receiving regular reminders as well. Out of these 27 women, 11 had already developed type 2 diabetes mellitus during the study period. And the top reason for failed screening included that many women believed that GDM would disappear after delivery and being occupied with the baby. So these are two most important reasons for failed screening in the postpartum period. Dr. Musarrat Riaz and Professor Abdul Basit had given this wonderful article in the Public Health, Integrated GDM Management in Public Health, a Pakistan Perspective. And over here you can see that they have identified problems regarding GDM and given the steps to address GDM as well. And one of the important factor that is a hindrance factor in terms of long-term management of these patients is lack of postpartum screening among women diagnosed with GDM. So in Pakistan, we have started this Serendip project. Most of you are already familiar with this. Pakistan Endocrine Society, South Asian Federation of Endocrine Societies, Society of Obs-Gynae, Pakistan, and South Asian Federation of Obs-Gynae have collaborated for hyperglycemia in pregnancy. So this project actually has started with disseminating, educating our healthcare professionals in screening and diagnosing and managing GDM and postpartum care, and will then extend to public awareness in terms of about GDM and the long-term risk reduction for type 2 diabetes mellitus, how to address those challenges as well. So there was a GDM registry which Dr. Musarrat Riaz has worked on this registry, and the ownership of this registry mainly is with the Society of Obs-Gynae of Pakistan. This registry needs to be activated, and linking this GDM registry to the National Diabetes Prevention Program is important so that we do not lose these patients on their follow-ups. And involving primary care and post-GDM care is very important, and that is something that will then translate into reduction in type 2 diabetes mellitus risk in these women. Not only these women, but also their children as well. And lifestyle intervention trials, intensive intervention trials like we have seen in the DPP and the currently going other trials, those are really intensive lifestyle intervention trials for DM prevention in these post-GDM women. Dr. Arshad Hussain and his team is working through the National Diabetes Prevention Program and are developing these SMS messages for our public awareness, and one of these messages is about post-GDM care and the risk associated with and what to do to prevent that risk. So what we know about is GDM in pregnancy. We worry about hyperglycemia in pregnancy. However, there is an underlying enhanced type 2 diabetes mellitus and cardiovascular risk factor profile. So pregnancy offers an excellent window of opportunity for a cost-effective window of opportunity to provide maternal care services, to reduce the traditional maternal and perinatal morbidity and mortality indicators that we all the time worry about. However, both the mother and the offspring are at higher risk of cardiovascular disease and type 2 diabetes mellitus in future life. So it addresses intergenerational prevention of NCDs such as diabetes mellitus, hypertension, and cardiovascular disease and stroke through intervention that is aimed to reduce these chronic conditions. So with this, I come to the end of my talk, and I'm really grateful for your patient listening.
Thank you so much, Dr. Aisha, for an excellent talk on a burning topic. And now the house is also quite full and open for any question answers.
Dr. Aisha, in one of the slides you mentioned that if the patient were having GDM and were overweight, then their risk of developing diabetes postpartum would almost double. My question is, does overweight increase the risk of GDM per se?
So if we look at risk factors for GDM, there are many. Overweight and obesity is one of the risk factors, but we know that when we are talking about screening for GDM, that is not dependent upon those risk factors, because we being South Asians are a high-risk population, and that is why you would like to screen, do a universal screening on these women. But definitely you are correct that obesity and overweight confers a higher risk of GDM as well.
Assalamu alaikum. Very nice lecture, Dr. Aisha, as always. You mentioned that the failure rate of the patient who don't come for follow-up. Can you suggest anything to improve the compliance of the patient after the delivery when the patient has GDM? In Pakistan, in study in Pakistan, you mentioned that there was only 27 patients who responded. And this is the usual story. One patient come and the patient get delivered. After that, patient just lose the follow-up. Is there any other method which we can do to improve the compliance of the patient and prevent the diabetes mellitus in those patients?
So one method is to keep on educating about the postpartum follow-up and need for postpartum care during the periods of pregnancy, when she is regularly falling with her primary obstetrician or maybe their physician for her GDM care. One point is that, but even despite that, women are lost to follow-up. They just forget that they had to. So having intensive lifestyle interventions, intervention trials is one thing. So if you have, and linking the GDM registry to the NDBP is something, so that all those women who have GDM are not lost from that follow-up period that is required otherwise. The other thing is to involve the family. So if the family has a role to play, in our population we know that we have a very strong family setup, and family should be utilized for that thing. The other thing which can be helpful is if you educate her enough that if you do not do all these things, your child would be at risk of obesity and diabetes as well. So maybe if she is not doing this for herself, because we know that during pregnancy she can check 4 times blood sugar, she can inject her insulin 4 times, she can come for follow-up every week even if you call her, but after delivery she is just lost to follow-up. And during pregnancy she is doing all that because she is concerned about her baby. So maybe if you keep that thing sparking in her, that if she continues to address her postpartum management and care, breastfeeding is something that will help not only herself, her baby as well. So maybe our women would understand that thing better.
Aisha, again, excellent talk. I mean, one of the main problems were, and that was even in UK that we found, was what should be the correct investigation to diagnose diabetes, either the OGTT or fasting glucose levels or HbA1c. So what do you comment regarding, especially in Pakistan, because HbA1c is expensive, and with fasting glucose we will miss a lot, and OGTT patient don't like them.
So if we look at the guidelines, the SAFE's guideline and the SOGP, for South Asian population, we have advised OGTT as a screening tool in the postpartum period as well. For the very fact, because HbA1c is not widely available in all these countries. The other thing is that the high prevalence of anemia would mean that the result would not be highly predictable of diabetes. So OGTT is something that is the most effective and most useful test in the postpartum period to identify correctly the glucose abnormality. So that should be educated and that should be used.
Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Asha. Very excellent talk. Just what percentage of the women remain diabetic or glucose intolerance after the delivery? Because I think what the message is been given to them by perhaps by their obstetrician is that आपको वो उस किस्म की डायबिटीज़ है जो डिलीवरी के बाद ठीक हो जाती है. और थिंक ये मेरे ख्याल में मैसेज जो जा रहा है ये मैसेज थोड़ा सा इशू कर रहा है. हम कह सकते हैं कि वक्ती तौर पर उनका ग्लूकोज इंटॉलरेंस इम्प्रूव हो जाता है जो कि एक वन ऑफ द मार्कर्स है ना. तो सिर्फ ग्लूकोज इंटॉलरेंस इम्प्रूव तो ज़रूर हो रहा है लेकिन शायद बाकी सारी चीज़ें इम्प्रूव नहीं हो रही जो अंडर द सी है.
Definitely, and this is one reason that the Pakistan study that I showed, women thought that this is just finished after delivery and there is no longer a need to follow up, and that is why the correct message has to be delivered to them. So public awareness is something that will help, and I'm sure through the Serenity Project we would be able to do more in terms of diabetes prevention in future for these women. Yeah. So that is what, until unless your people are educated enough about the terms, they feel it easier to understand baby sugar or baby diabetes. But definitely, we have to modify that term as well.
Dr. Aisha, excellent talk. We really enjoyed it. And I really salute the efforts that are being made by the Diabetic Society for prevention. It's excellent. My question, being a cardiologist, will be, how many of these patients had high blood pressure, and how did this blood pressure respond to the whatever treatment that you are giving? Did you look at that?
No, I haven't looked at specifically this point, and this is very important question. When we talk about cardiovascular risk profile in these women, definitely dyslipidemia and hypertension, obesity are those risk factors that were there. But I have to specifically look deep into the data, whether what kind of blood pressure records were available.
Data about the GDM, the prevalence of the patient the before marriage and after marriage, after first trimester, any data available?
Okay, so if we talk about GDM screening, actually we need to understand that in Pakistan, even universal screening practices are evolving. So many centers are not doing screening on a regular basis. This is what SAFE's guidance has suggested, that any woman who is going to start her family should have her preconception OGTT available to them, because otherwise you won't be knowing an over-diabetes mellitus patient or pre-existing diabetes that would otherwise be missed. However, Dr. Musarrat can maybe share her data from the World Diabetes Foundation grant when you looked at each trimester's GDM prevalences in our population.
Okay, we have to, sorry, yes, Dr. Musarrat, please.
Okay, so the study that we did, so we had very high number of patients who presented in the first trimester, because we did it in all 3 trimesters. So majority were in second, but there was an equally good number in first and third. So sometimes they are missed, first one, and if the second OGTT is negative, then usually doctors and patients both are very happy. Now we don't have this one, but we have got a lot of patients who presented in the third trimester as well.
Sorry, we have to stop the question answer session. Okay.
The risk of developing type 2 diabetes is less as compared to those who are not breastfeeding. What's the reason behind? Second, whether the newborn baby is also protected in his future life. The third one is that we should include and we should encourage breastfeeding in prevention program of diabetes.
Yes, very important point, and this is what Professor Abdul Basit last night actually emphasized on breastfeeding as well. And the other thing that he emphasized was appropriate for gestational age babies. So if the infant born is small for gestational age or large for gestational age, both are at risk of diabetes and obesity in the future life. Coming to the breastfeeding, since the data that I've shared are coming from observational studies that haven't looked into causative relationship of the benefit, we cannot actually commit. We can just have plausible explanation for that. We know that breastfeeding will be utilizing calories from the mother, and we know that even observational studies have shown that the babies who are breastfed are again at a lower risk of obesity and diabetes in future life as well. But exact cause and effect relationship has to be established through proper trials as well.